let's roll.
Ron, just to start off, I think I noticed that the coaches were probably a little bit more amped up today than they have been at other practices. Even Nate Katzer was kind of getting a fire under guys. Just for you guys as coaches, when you have game week, what is that switch for you all when you start to get a little bit more focused on the details of things versus the practices leading up to it?
Well, I think a big part of it more than anything else is we're playing against somebody else. And so we don't want to go there and get our butts kicked. We want to go out there and we want to play hard. We want to play right. And we're going to play to win. And so we want to practice that way. We want to make sure the guys understand the sense of urgency, the importance, how things are changing. And you're right, we were ramped up a little bit today. I thought the players, we started slow, wasn't very happy about that. So we threw the offense off and started with the defense. And we picked up our tempo from that point on. So I was happy about that. But that's what we're looking for. When you start getting ready, and there's no second chances. Once you get started, you got to roll.
The other thing, I noticed that Eric Flowers was getting more reps at left guard today at practice, and then I have a secondary follow-up. Matt Ioannidis was in pads, but he wasn't at practice. Can you kind of speak to mixing in Eric Flowers in the first team and then also what's going on with Matt?
Well, we've always been mixing Eric with the first team at the left side. It's what he is. It's what he's really good at. And he's had a good camp. As far as Matt's concerned, we're ramping Matt up. He wanted to come out in full gear and kind of get a sense and a feel. He went through some of the group stuff. More so, and again, when guys are coming back, we just want to make sure they're ready to roll before we expose them to anything.
Hey, Ron, his rookie season he dealt with injury, and then there was so much weird stuff with the pandemic. How do you feel like Sadiq Charles is doing in really his first offseason?
I think Sadiq's come a long way. I really do. There's a lot of little things that he still has to learn. The fortunate stuff for him is the guys that he's behind are some veteran guys that he can really learn from. And that's one of the luxuries we have is we got some pretty good depth right now, so we're feeling pretty strong about that.
Things gotten any clearer for you, interior or exterior for him, tackle, guard, all that?
He's learning both spots because, we think it'll be really valuable for him. Once we get an opportunity to truly say, hey, you know what, this is what he's really good at, we'll settle in. But right now, having the position flex is probably the best opportunity may be created for him, and we'll see.
So much gets made about having another year in a system for certain players, but for this defense as a whole, after learning Jack's scheme last year and what you want out of them too, how much of a jump can they make in year two, and what specific areas do you think could be the biggest jumps?
Well, I think they can make a big jump. I think a big part of it is first of all, getting everybody to buy in and how to do it, the way that we want things done. I think that's very important. And once guys get a feel for, we don't need one guy conquering and winning and destroying everybody. We need everybody to be disciplined, do your jobs, and make the plays you're supposed to. The plays will come to the guys. That's the thing they have to understand. The play comes to you, then you got to make it. And that's where we are now. I think the discipline part of it is really big for us. But the thing that I really think that you see now is they're playing faster. They're communicating better. That's the important thing, because once that happens, playing fast is at an optimum, because that's when you make plays.
First, real quick on William Jackson. Didn't see him in team drills. Was there just what's going on there?
We're just bringing William along. He was nicked the other day, and we just want to make sure and be careful.
With Terry McLaurin, I know a lot's been talked about with him and yourself included. He talks a lot about patience. How do you see that in the route running? Seems like his body's doesn't have a lot of noise to it when he runs his routes, head still, all that. What are some of the little things you see in terms of the patience that has really been different for him in this camp?
I think it's really about his route running more than anything else, and that's selling the route a little bit more before you break off it. And sometimes certain routes, they count for a certain amount of depth, and sometimes the guy gets anxious and he breaks the route off too soon, and he's not really where he needs to be. That's probably one of the things that you see about Terry. His route running is getting even better. And it's also for a couple of our other guys. It's just understanding that, you've got to make sure you're at the optimal depth. You've got to make sure you get the optimal width on your release. Those are things that are important. Those are the little things that, require a little bit of patience, a little bit of discipline when you run routes.
How much do you see that trickling down, what he does trickle down to some of the other younger guys?
Well, the one guy that you really see is you see Diami really kind of showing some really positive things as Dax. You see these young guys, they're watching these veteran guys, and I think they're learning from them.
I know Taylor Heineke came up hobbling a little bit. I know you can't go or won't go into injury stuff a little bit, but do you feel okay with where he's at health-wise?
Yeah.
And that group as a whole? And I know you were asked earlier, do you plan to bring in another quarterback even for competition at this point?
No, we're fine where we are. Taylor's moving around well, doing some really good things. Very, very pleased with his continued progress. Obviously like how Fitz is really fitting in right now with our guys. Kind of a little anxious getting Kyle back. We want to get Kyle back out there and get him working. But we got to continue with that. And Steven's progressing. He's a young guy. He's got a lot to learn.
And just with Thursday, just with Cam Newton being on the Patriots, when you look back on your time with him, were there things you learned in developing him and, working with him over the years that you've been able to apply now to the quarterback situation here?
Well, one of the biggest things we talk about is doing that player's strength, sticking to what he does best. And, that was one of the things that I think really made Cam such a special player is the things that he did best, he did really good. He really, really did. And he's that kind of player. He can optimize his talents. And when you do that, you give him a chance to succeed. And he's a guy that I personally, I would never vote against,
When Heineke got banged up, as Nicky was mentioning, he looked like he was favoring it and hopping around, but he stayed in there and he got right back in there. And then as the practice went along, he seemed like he started throwing more, authoritatively. How important is that considering his injury history? And I know every injury is different, just for him to show that resiliency and that fight and to not have to shut it down and to stay in there and do his thing.
Well, that's always big, a guy that, can shake things off, and I'll be honest with you, just watching him get bumped, I didn't think there was anything to it. But, getting back in the huddle when you shake things off, your teammates see it, that helps your guys. So that was good for him.
Got a random one with you related to the preseason. Has your appreciation for the preseason changed now that you're a coach versus when you were a player?
Not really. It's just a different perspective more than it is anything else. I think there are some important aspects to the preseason, not just the practice, but the opportunity to compete against an opponent. Because I think there's nothing like true competition. As a coach, one of the things that I always tell our guys is, we get high on players when you're practicing against each other. That's because there's no consequences. When you start putting an opponent out there and you start keeping score, now there's consequences. So for a coach, now's the chance to really see. You may have a defensive back that makes a lot of plays. And you say, guys, he's doing that. Well, if you look at the tape, you see he's jumping specific routes. No consequences. Now you're in the game time. Now that's what we really look for. It's the same thing when we do the one-on-one pass rush. Sometimes an end will get caught up on something and he'll just kind of shut it down. Well, in a game, there's consequences because you can see that. Practice is a little bit different. So for me, I think it's really just perspective more than it is anything else. No matter how I look at it, I still hate it.
Why do you hate it?
Just because it's not the real deal. I can't wait for the regular season to start. I really can't. And you get very anxious. I mean, the first couple of days of camp, it's cool because you're seeing everybody again and it's fresh and it's new. And then after a while, it becomes drudgery. And you got to remember, I played in a little different era when things were just a little bit different. So as a coach, the appreciation of the good old days is missed on these young guys because they don't know. They have no idea what it was really like.
Can I ask a little bit follow up on that? The 2 weeks before the regular season, how much does that help you as a coach?
It'll help you in terms of really, once you get things going and you get a good flow as you're preparing for the regular season. And that's a good question because I've been thinking about, best way to optimize those 2 weeks. And so once we can get into the flow and get a rhythm going as far as coaching, getting the players to practice and understand the tempo and the speed of practice that we're going to need, I think you'll feel really good about it. Secondly, it gives you an opportunity to make sure all your good guys are ready to go. When I say good guys, your starters are ready to go. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for it. And I think it's going to make for a really good opening week for everybody throughout the league.
Fitzpatrick and Adam Humphries' chemistry, the history going back to Tampa Bay has been pretty clear over the past couple weeks. What has it been like to see them work together over the past few practices?
Well, I'll say this: when you watch, what Fitz has done with some of the other guys too, you do see that chemistry right away. Like he's got a great rapport right now with Terry. I like how he's kind of gotten into that groove with him. I like the rapport you see that he has with Logan. And then you watch some of the things that he's done with Cam Sims and stuff. The backs, he's got a great sense of feel for the backs. But I think the thing with Adam, and again, it's understanding what the situation is. Situational football dictates a lot. Third and short, third and medium. You know, the tendency is to work a little bit more inside, work the slot a little bit. That's where you do see the chemistry, and that's important. You know, it's a good thing that they know each other, they understand each other, because now you get into a game and you just know that he has a good feel, that he trusts him a lot.
Ron, when a quarterback makes a mistake, particularly interception, it's far more noticeable than what a lot of other guys are making mistakes.
Yep.
So for the young guy like Steven Montez, you mentioned he's still developing. He's had a lot of interceptions, especially late in recent practices. How do you balance as a coach? He's still learning versus, okay, actually it's, you know, you want to see the production on
Right.
the
The
field.
truth about it with Steven, and I tell Steven he's got to stop trying to make the perfect play and just make the right play. You know, he's trying to do things that you know, if you're a 3-4 year vet that's had success and understanding, you know, and you got a feel for those types of things, those are the kind of things that you can do. When you don't have the kind of experience he has. Stop trying to make the perfect play. The perfect play is score a touchdown in every play, and it's not going to happen. So you make the right play. If it calls to throw a check down, you throw a check down. If it calls for throw the slant, throw the slant. But we don't need you to make those home runs. And so for me right now, with Steven, it's letting him go out and learn, letting him make the mistakes, and just hope he learns from those mistakes, and we don't see that mistake over and over and over again. Because there is a point where they get to the old thing about insanity. You know, it's doing the same thing over and over, expecting something different to happen.
Mentioned a little bit the monotony kind of in the middle of camp. It feels like something that maybe joint practices would break up a little bit. Is this a situation where kind of you have a young team and you want more time with your coaches with them as opposed to battling out with another? And is that something that, you know, you kind of would look to maybe do as the team matures and gets more into it?
Yes and yes. You know, if you go back and look at my history in Carolina, we practiced against other teams. We didn't practice against another team until my 4th year when we really felt comfortable. And then it became something that we did, I think, on an annual basis. We did 3 more times, or 2 more times, excuse me. But I do think there is value to that, and that does break up the monotony. But, you know, with us still having some of the COVID protocols and then us going down to Richmond, you know, I just felt that this would not be an appropriate time to do it. And we are a young football team, and it is something that we will explore going into the future.